Welcome once again to Deep Web 3 Secrets. I'm Alex Trapp, aka Eco, and I'm here with Spirit Surge. Spirit, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
It's been a good week. It's been a productive week. We're getting some rains here again. I'm excited to talk about kind of follow on from our last conversation. We got a lot of good input, and I've learned a lot in the meantime. So let me know off the top of your head, what was the most interesting thing that you got in feedback from our first episode?
The most interesting feedback that I actually received was actually in the DMs. Was talking about the NFTs part of things, where they talked about, well, right, you're talking about the development part, decentralization, and databases. Where do NFTs fit into that? That was literally the feedback I got because our first session essentially resulted in people having more questions than answers and more follow-ups than the normal feedback that you're expecting. I mean, I'm sure there were some comments about having games with the same ecosystem, or having like language is like the same thing, or trustworthiness is the same thing, and that's fine. I mean, in the end, there's there is no right answer because for different language. Like for instance, if you take Arabic, right? Uh, the word for trust, confidence, hope is all the same, right? And we know that in the end, like in English, confidence, trustworthiness, um, hope are not the same words. So it's there is always going to be a language barrier, even if people insist there isn't, because of the way communication happens all around the world. But yeah, NFTs was big follow up. I got in my DMs, people asking me more questions about, okay, they're talking about decentralization, but where does this fit in? Or where does that fit in? So
I,
that was the most part, or like interesting part of the feedback I got.
yeah, I love that. And I think we're going to get to that today. Just to touch on cross cultural communication, I know it's true. I know it's true. I've lived it. And it's funny because I also understand the people that say, there's this thing and it doesn't matter. It exists. And, you could say it's different, but it is what it is. And so, in a certain sense, there is one reality, and we have a lot of different languages trying to discuss it. But I think when that one reality, so maybe you can imagine that there does exist a single idea of trust. But when we try to describe it in different ways, in different languages, there really is at least a psychological difference in how we understand that single concept, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not only from the perspective of languages; it's also perspective from the person. Like I am, for instance, a project owner, right? My perspective of trustworthiness is going to be something different than from what the investor is expecting, simply because if, for instance, that's not properly communicated. So my guy, right, my investor might be expecting that I am like I consider this guy trustworthy if he gives me a full project and he gives me my money's return back. But as a project owner, right, I might be thinking, hey, I'm trustworthy as long as I'm communicating with people, right? Doesn't matter if I am changing the roadmap 10 times, right? But I'm trustworthy because I'm openly communicating with people, right? It doesn't matter if I'm jumping from project to project. It doesn't matter if I am, falsifying information. It doesn't matter if I am changing the roadmap repeatedly. So there's that perspective as well. It's also not only the language perspective, it's also the perspective of the person who's delivering.
Yes, even in the same language. And you made me think of so many things like front end versus back end. And we could talk about even data. We can attach ourselves to any API and get data, but is that data real? Is it valuable in the sense, or trustworthy in the sense that it's based on actual user interactions, or are these junk junk information that has been filled in, let's say, as sample data? So fantastic discussion there, because even within the same language, we could have some disagreements on what it means to be trustworthy.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I mean, for for a person who runs a community, right, and for the person who's taking part in the community, for the person who is looking at this community from a third party perspective or from an outsider's perspective, they all have different concepts. That's why you have, that's why you don't have everyone investing into the same project. That's why, someone will say, I like this project, I'm going to invest in that, because they fit in within my idea of trustworthiness. Where someone else might say, what, sure, these guys are delivering and they're like super awesome and all of that, but they're not fitting within my interest of trustworthiness. I don't think I'll make get my money back from them, or I think it's going to end up in a loss. So they don't invest in that project. There's just so many moving pieces in the human psyche, right? When it comes to selecting a project, doing a due diligence, right? That's why we're here, right? To break down this human psyche.
Yes, that is why we're here, giving some perspective. So I got a feedback uh, from my mother, and it was so nice to hear that my mother was able to listen to us and understand us, and she didn't get bored. So I got a really nice feedback from her, and that made me happy. We did get a little technical, but I think we worked our way around. The idea of this podcast is not only for developers. We want to talk to regular people, people who are not familiar or as familiar with this space as we are. I think that's really where we can add value. So far, based on the feedback, we're on the right track. We're talking in language that people can understand. And I think part of that is because we are from kind of two different sides of the coin. So we're translating to each other, right? We're not two back end guys talking about back end stuff. We're kind of um, let's say outside looking in and an inside looking out. And so when we talk to each other, I think we're using good language. There's a point I wanted to touch on. You mentioned the word invest. And I wonder why, or what you think about why in Web 2, although you could invest in Google or Facebook, but in Web 2, no one really said that when you were going to play Farmville, even if you spent money on the tokens or the packages of gold coins or whatever, no one talked about investing in Farmville. No one talked about investing your personal data in Twitter or investing your time. But in Web3, it's all of a sudden we're almost every conversation has these financial overtones to it. What do you attribute to that really switch in language about how we talk about Web 2 versus Web 3?
So I want to touch since you talked about this. It's not just Web 3; it's just Web 2 as well. There was this news that came in last week about a kid, 18 years old. He was playing Counter Strike. He's just 3 days into his Counter Strike. He pulled out a knife from a chest. Okay, and Counter Strike is not a Web 3 game; it's a Web 2 game. And he pulled out a knife, right, and he sold it for $180,000. Right,
Oh,
3 days into the game, the 18-year-old just uh, sold it for $180,000. This isn't just like that. You take Yoda, right, another Web 2 game, right, and they had this couriers, right. So there's some Baby Russian and all of that stuff, and those couriers, right, couriers, they don't have any game impact. It's a visual impact, right, and that Baby Russian sold for 120,000 dollars, something like that, back like several years ago. So this hasn't started now. This has been going on for a long, long time. You're talking about Farmville, right? The only reason why this is not impacted Farmville is because you cannot trade items, right? If I have a cow or if I have a pink goat or whatever it is, right, I can gift it to other people, but I can't trade it. There is no facilitation or escrow service that I can use that is going to allow me to take this pink goat, a coveted pink goat, from someone else. And if you were to take other Web2 games like Counter Strike, like Dota, and they have like PUBG, right? They have all of this visual stuff, cosmetic stuff that they can trade and they can, earn real, like through an escrow service, earn money from it. What Web3 does is that it facilitates everything within a single service. You don't have to rely on an escrow service, right? You don't have to rely on three, four other guys to convert this team money into real money. Uh, so basically, what Web3 does is it facilitates this very action that people are playing the game for. Sure, Counter Strike is fun, Dota is fun, but if I can make money while I'm playing the game, that's even better because I'm having fun. But now, you know, I'm earning money from it. Uh, so these financial overtones have always existed. It's just become more and more easy to do it nowadays than if you were to go back 10 years ago, if you were to go back 11 years ago, if you were to go back even 6 years ago. Now, we talk, if you are taking an elder gentleman or an elder woman, right, someone who's just getting into a game, if you were to go back 11 years ago, there's no way they could sit down and trade something for actual money. But now, because of Web3, because of crypto, they can. So it has always existed, and it is always going to exist. And we're just, as developers, making it easier for everyone to do.
Right. Okay. So this reminds me my personal journey of World of Warcraft. I think there was a way that some people were farming gold. They were maybe even manipulating the auction houses. I never really understood while I was playing how they were doing that, right? I was just playing. I needed to get a certain number of silk to make, a stack of silk to make the next item or whatever. But there it was in the auction house. I could pay gold. And from my perspective, I could get gold from playing the game, or I could get gold from Blizzard. But later I learned that there were, and I don't know if they were all Chinese, but that was the word on the street was that there were people in China playing the game, farming gold, and selling it to people like me. Not, I actually never did buy any, but people like me in the Western world that didn't want to farm gold. And further than that, that Blizzard had taken action. They had banned accounts, they had made this prohibited behavior, and they were working very hard to stop it from happening, but it was not very easy to stop. So, would you say that in the Web3 world, instead of projects working against what the natural market forces are doing, it's more like leaning into that tendency?
Uh, well, yeah, of course. The reason, well, first let's look at the base root cause or base root reason of why even the big companies like Blizzard or the RuneScape guys, right? They want to ban money trading because once that starts happening, scams, abuse, those kind of things start happening, and once that starts happening, then you become an object of investigation because you are now running a game where people are getting scammed, abused, they're losing their money. And if you're getting investigated for that because you're not taking action, it can result in dire ramifications of you losing your user retention, right? And obviously user acquisition. So the only thing they can do is they can obviously push towards it heavily and ban accounts, ban bots, wherever it is. In Web3, where the expectation itself is that uh, we are providing the service to you, right? But we are going to educate you, or we're going to let you know how to do things, so you don't lose money. But oftentimes, if you go in Discord, one of the most common announcement messages you're going to see is, "We will never DM you," right? Uh, we will never DM you, and if there's someone if someone DMs you saying they're impersonating you, so don't give them any money, don't indulge them in whatever it is, so just so that you don't get scammed. And it's just that, right? Web3 is all about providing opportunities and services, but one of the major parts that is missing is the education part. It's not enough that you are providing a service to your users. It is imperative that you educate your users towards a proper, what we want to say, communication protocol, right? A technical protocol on how or the functionality of your X trading service or your X marketplace.
Yes. Okay. So many good points there. Okay. First, it's not necessarily that these gaming companies want to push back, although they may want to for um, a couple of reasons. But they're required by law, and they're facing heavy pressure to not be money transmitters or to not be uh, qualifying as things that other than a gaming company. So if they open up these opportunities wider, they might fall afoul of the SEC, for example. Okay, so that's really interesting. And then scams. So scams, I remember playing Diablo 2 and some guy said, "Hey, give me your rare item and I'm going to duplicate it." And then he ran away. He never gave it back to me. And that was the first digital scam I ever fell for. He stole my, I think it was, well, I forget what it was, some rare armor. Um, that scam has always existed, and now so a lot of people associate Web3 or crypto with scams, but the scams have always been here. In fact, crypto could facilitate scams just like it can facilitate regular business. It facilitates interactions between people, and some of those interactions are going to be scammy. And so you, as a user, need to be more careful than ever about the scams. Is you would you agree with that?
Oh, that's perfectly put in. Yes, I mean that's the most important thing. Uh, See, with every good technology, with every piece of good technology, there are going to be bad people. In the end, this trading service, it is a tool, right? Just like a gun is, and it all depends on the person who's using the tool, what he's going to do with it, right? I, as someone who is wanting to like play a game, oh, I got this cool NFT, I want to trade it for another NFT because I've got the good duplicates now, right? Okay, then I'm going to trade for that. That's how I'm going to use this tool. But someone else might look at this and say, hey, I can make money from this, right? I can trick people into giving me their stuff for a lower value, and then I can sell it at a higher price. Uh, is that scammy? Not necessarily, because you're trying to turn a profit. But if you are, taking something from someone and you're taking advantage of the fact that they are ignorant or that they really are have no idea about the value of the thing, and you are aware of the fact that they have no idea about the value of the thing, and you're taking advantage. Um, it, Not necessarily as people might not think it's a scam, but I think it's dishonest and it shouldn't be done. But
It's
then again, different people have different standards.
yeah, then it goes right back to our cultural discussion. It makes me think of here locally in our small town in Colombia, there's a lot of discussion about intermediaries when they sell the plantains or the bananas, the potatoes. The intermediaries pay them less and sell them for more, and a lot of people perceive that as a scam or a ripoff. You didn't grow the potato. Why are you getting more money? Uh, in a certain extent, the intermediary does provide a service. The farmer doesn't have time to stand around and wait to sell the potato pound by pound. He wants to sell all of his potatoes at once and get back to the farm. And so the intermediary is providing some value in terms of the bananas. They sell them all to a big truck, and the big truck drives across the country and sells it in a big city where people are paying a lot more for those bananas. And that discussion about how much money of the banana should go to the farmer versus the intermediary is a really interesting discussion. And some people do claim that that's a scam. Uh, the intermediary is also providing some value, so it's not only a scam. But this is not even about web. This is probably a 5,000 or even more year old discussion.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just, you know, the whole perspective of creating NFTs, right? Non-fungible tokens, right? For those who don't know, non-fungible means that it is unique and it can't be replaced, right? And what, what, so like if you were to compare with bananas, plantains, or potatoes, right, which can be duplicated, a non-fungible token is unique, cannot be replaced, has a unique signature. That's how you basically,
Okay, so the
change.
let me jump in here. So when we're talking about World of Warcraft gold, that's a fungible item. That's every gold that I earn is the same as every gold that anybody else earns, and you don't know which gold you earned first. You only know you got 1,000 of them, and if you spend 500, you're not really sure which of those 1,000 you spent. But on the other hand, we've got the Counter Strike. Was it a dagger?
Yeah,
Obviously,
nice. Yeah.
yeah, knife. That must have had some very unique properties. It must have been quite rare. Um, and so, on a technical side, usually that comes with an ID number or something internal that can track which dagger is which. If you have two knives, you know which is which as a player because either visually or by the title, you say, well, this is the rare dagger of the lunar temple, and a different dagger will have a different title. That so those are then non-fungible. Do you have any other examples? We could talk about single origin coffee. So when people here locally sell coffee, they sell it as a commodity, fungible, like pork bellies. Every pork belly is the same. Every coffee is the same. Well, wait a second. Recently, people have started deciding that every coffee is not the same. We want to know which farm the coffee came from and in what conditions it was grown in. And so people have started to make their coffees less fungible and right on the
Mhm.
bag. This was harvested in this time in this farm, single origin. So a lot of these concepts are outside of the technical world as well. The digital realm is not the birthplace of fungibility and non fungibility. That's probably a forex domain, right?
Well, yeah, but we go way more minute with NFTs because non-fungible. You're talking about the word non-fungible. That's fine. Like everything you said fits within the criteria. But when you add tokens in that, right? You add the word token next to it. That's when everything changes. Here's why. Imagine that you are going to a store, right? You see this big building, right? It's empty. It's like you can like it's a store. It has stuff inside. That whole building is essentially an entry an NFT entry into the decentralized blockchain, right? What happens right now is that NFTs are capable of holding information. They can hold in images, they can hold in music, they can hold in a lot of data. There is something known as NFT storage that can hold up to 32 GBs of data within a single NFT, right? That type of tech is coming now. Uh, what happens right now is that we have these bunch of non-fungible, unique tokens where they just have the building, they have a picture in front of it, or like a board logo on it, but inside everything is empty. That's literally the stick. You take a board ape. You ever heard of board apes, right? You've heard of CryptoPunks.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, all of these are just images with traits, right? And that's all they're holding. There's a huge amount of unutilized data within that particular NFT that is not being used. That's where basically for a developer, right, he can look to it and he can say, you know what, I could add a lot of utility within that particular NFT. Now, I'm going to jump a bit into the technical side just to explain a very, very serious concept of why NFTs are so important.
Well, can I let me
When
interrupt you? Let me interrupt for a second. I want to take this slow. I want to walk around this once before we really dive in because uh last year or maybe 2 years ago, the really funny meme was right click save as. And and I want to talk about this. So I get a board ape and inside my token is not even an image link, a link to an image that's hosted on a centralized server, and maybe some numbers, right? Head 47, uh, accessory 13, teeth 21. Okay, so what does that mean? I mean, I know between the two of us, we at that time could see the potential of this technology, but I laughed a lot about this right click save as meme because basically you don't own the image. You own a token with some data in it. Um, and a lot of times that image link is hosted on a centralized server. So I know you're going to get into the NFTs being able to hold more data, but 2 years ago when Bored Apes came out, I mean, did you buy some? Was this the new technology or the was this the application of the new technology you were really interested in?
Um, so I just you're literally going towards the direction where I wanted to go. So yeah, uh, regarding board apes, when like it's just not board ape, you go back, right? You had Crypto Kitties. That was like the first few versions that came out
Kitties,
long
yep.
before it came out, and there were other so many projects that have gone past. Holding So let me just very clarify again. I'm going to go into this technical side because I need to explain this concept very clearly. Any game right now, if you were to play, right? Um, if you were to play that game, it would take information out of a centralized database and show you. Like take Counter Strike, that knife is going to be in some database, right? That is could be non-fungible, meaning it could be unique and irreplaceable, but it is not a token. Why is it not token? Because it's not a cryptographic asset. It doesn't exist on the blockchain. It is using a database to take out information. What is actually an NFT? An NFT is basically an entry on the blockchain, right? And if I were to call information, I would not call it from a centralized database. I would call it directly from that NFT cryptographic asset transaction that is on chain, meaning that board ape information that I'm getting, that image, and the fact that it has this traits, all of that information is stored on that particular NFT, right? And why is this so huge? This is so huge is because there is no centralized database where things can be changed or they can be manipulated, right? If there's a board ape 1161, it has pink here and it is on chain, no matter what happens, right? No matter anyone who does a right click save as and then turns the hair blue, right? That doesn't change the fact that that particular board ape is always going to have pink hair because of the information that is stored on chain. And this is the biggest and the hugest thing that people need to understand about NFTs. The whole reason why they can provide so much utility is because they don't exist on a database. They exist on chain, which several people, node holders, node operators have access to, and no one can change that information. Sure, you can right click save as an image, right? But even if you were to make changes in that particular image, if on chain, Board Ape 1161 is always going to have pink hair. And yeah, so that's basically the direction that I was taking this conversation. Why the Web 2, right? Okay, so you have this dagger, right? He sold it for $180,000. Tomorrow, if Counter Strike, the gentleman from Counter Strike, the owners, the founders decided to change information regarding that particular dagger, no one can do anything, right? It's the same as the disadvantages of a centralized system. Like take Twitter, they changed it to X, right? So the
Yes.
guy who owned the at X account, right, wasn't given any compensation. The account was just taken from him, right, and he was offered merchandise in replacement for that. So it's just the harm of centralized systems is that, and NFTs is specifically there so that you can record large amount of data, anything, right? You could record a full movie onto an NFT, which is on chain, and any information that will be called from the chain and not from a database which is in the control of someone else.
Yes. Okay. I was just thinking about that. A Twitter name could be considered non-fungible, right? No one else can have the same one, but it's not a token because they could take it away from you. It's on their centralized database. So that's a current example of the difference here. So, okay, so a lot of these concepts have always existed, exist in the real world, but the real new thing is token. So, tokens can be fungible or non-fungible. We're about, what would you say? We're about 6, 7 years into this tokenization revolution. Um, One thing that I'd like to mention is the difference between a token and a coin. Um, this this definition has seems to become lost over time. But originally, a coin like Bitcoin is a native currency to a blockchain, and a token or a sub token is an accounting system within that. Am I getting that right? Is that would you still say that that distinction holds between a token and a coin?
Well, yeah, a coin is basically layer one, right? That is the basic functionality or something that is used as a reward system, varies from chain to chain, right? It is there as a reward system, or it's there as the main token, sorry, as the main currency for a blockchain, right? Token is basically a layer two, right? Where someone else comes in and he says, I want to make a check on this particular chain because I like it has this advantages. What I'm going to do is now I am going to make my own token, right? In this case, if I'm creating an NFT, right? I'm going to say I'm going to create an NFT on this particular layer, right? On top of this layer, right? But I can't obviously call it a coin because coin is already being used for something else. So what do I do? And that coin is fungible. So what do I do? What I do is I create a token, right? a non-fungible one, and then I have a choice. I can either create another fungible token that works in tandem with this non-fungible token, like for instance, you can purchase it, or I can do it like what Ethereum does, where you can buy that non-fungible token with the layer one coin, Ethereum, uh, AVAX, or if you were to go to Binance and BNB. So yeah, you got the definition right.
Okay, excellent. And just talking about fungible coins and tokens, which both can exist, there's this example, Dogecoin is really a token that exists within Litecoin blockchain. I think, as far as I understand, Dogecoin resolves within the blocks of Litecoin. So Dogecoin is technically a token, although a fungible token. And then now Litecoin and even Bitcoin have these ordinals. So even the some of the original blockchain like Bitcoin, they're going towards this NFT idea where if we just adjust the tech a little bit, we can tell the difference between different satoshis, different bits of Bitcoin. Um, so I'm sensing that NFTs are really important. Uh, Bored apes never convinced me. The crypto kitties, I didn't convince me. Um, what would you say was the first project that convinced you that NFTs were going to be powerful in the future? Or did you always know?
The first time I heard about NFTs and saw how they work, the fact that you could circumvent databases, the fact that you can circumvent, people falsifying information, I knew this was the future, right? Because the biggest thing about Web3 is the fact that you can create data which is transparent and immutable. It cannot be changed. NFTs is a huge step towards that because of how that information. And so you see tokens, right? There's like you can't hold a lot of information in tokens. It's not possible, right? You can do inscriptions, which is what the ordinals is. They're doing inscriptions on satoshis, but the fact that you can circumvent the biggest problem of you having to own databases, right, and having to host databases, is huge. This also comes with a negative consequence, but we'll get into that later. So yeah, I mean, NFTs were always great. I from the start have not seen a single proper use of an NFT. I still haven't seen. And I'm gonna be honest, and I understand why it doesn't exist because of the negative consequences I've been talking about. But uh, we'll get to that, towards the end of this session.
So we're really early in this process, I think. And so the people that noticed this early started to play around with it, and I think play is the right word. I don't know if there's any other word to describe the bored apes. They started to play around, testing the technology, and so I think in that sense that the technology is so new, and innovators need to play with it and figure it out, learn lessons, make mistakes, have successes too, and build up a library of best practices, what works, what doesn't. I think that might be why gaming is such at the forefront right now, because literally these technologies are so new that we need to play with them. And so people have made and are making games. And with and through the games, we're going to figure out the best way to get these technologies into use. One of the issues that I see, for example, one of the first ideas that really got me thinking was land deeds. And I thought, yes, deeds are non-fungible, and if they were tokens, right, then that certain things would be easier, certain things would be better, certain things may not be better. But wow, I really thought that a non-fungible token land deed, that really got my attention. But everybody's got to have a wallet, so the onboarding is a big issue. Onboarding is a huge issue. So I think gaming is at the forefront precisely because there's a lot of playing that needs to be done as we figure out how to implement these technologies um, into governments and into nation states and into real life. First, the gamer, let the gamer experiment. And so that kind of brings us to what you're working on with gaming. Were you a player before you were a game developer, or how did that path travel for you?
I think the first time I actually gained awareness was, I remember I was just playing games all the time, like playing Pong, you know, or playing, what was it, Space Invaders on Good Boy.
Yes.
I'm like, I've always been a gamer, like from the start, and I've been obsessed with gaming. And sure, I born when you're born in the Middle East, right? You obviously come with expectations from your family, and you have to do engineering. You have to follow a path because, like, being a game developer is not considered a proper path when you're going towards Middle Eastern families. But this was something I always wanted to do, and I'm glad that I've stepped onto this path. And just looking at that, right? So you mentioned this term, but gaming is the forefront right now for experimentation for NFT. And now I want to talk about one of the biggest drawbacks of an NFT system, which is a big problem for game developers to include it in the game. So I'm running a game, Astro Wars, right? It is a card game, TCG, just like Hearts. And I have a card there, which is called Red Potion. It gives you +1 attack and fury, which gives you double strike, allows a card to attack 2 times. But now what has happened is I'm getting feedback that this card is too strong. It needs to be changed, right? It needs to be toned down, or the ability has to change, or whatever it is. Now, what was the thing about NFTs that was so attractive? It was the fact that it was immutable, right? It can, like, the data within that particular thing cannot be changed. But now I'm in a scenario where I have a card that is so overpowered that people don't want to play the game. It's ruining their experience. So what do? I cannot make it an NFT, right? Because that's the truth of it. An NFT is immutable. But even though I have a token, right, the fact that I can change its data and it exists within my centralized database does not mean I'm running an NFT. It means I'm running an in-game. Uh, it's an in-game item, right? It's not an NFT. Even if I were to throw out a custom JSON on the chain saying, oh, this guy has a red potion. The fact that red potion's value is changing, the fact that the ability of the red potion is changing, means that it is not an NFT. And this is the biggest drawback for game developers to get past, because you need to get it right the first time, right? Or you need to find a way to not have that NFT in play anymore if you want to maintain the fact that your in-game items are NFTs. And to date, no one has gotten it right. And anyone who says they got it right are not running NFT. They're running centralized in-game items that they're changing the information and data repeatedly. I like that you mentioned land deeds. Land deeds is immutable because once that deed is on the chain, right? Sure, it's on. You have to have a wallet for it. That's understandable. I remember when USBs came out, right? Everyone was shocked that you need to have a USB to like store it, but people got around to it. It's gonna be the same here. Eventually, everyone will get used to it. And land deed is something that's immutable, right? Because once a land deed is signed and transferred, right, and there's a unique signature, that information is not going to change. But what happens if there is an extension within the land, or what happens is the terms of the land exchange, any any NFT, right, which requires an information to be changed on chain, right, is not an NFT anymore because it's not immutable. And that is such a huge concept that people need to work with. And that's why centralized governments are having so much trouble having to finding a workaround because they can't change anything anymore, right? If someone, uh, I remember there was this campaign back in El Salvador, right before they incorporated Bitcoin, and they talked about you know, having loans, bank loans, as NFTs, right? But then came the problem that what happens if the terms of the loan changes, right? Do you discard an NFT and you give another NFT, right? And it became this huge moral dilemma where uh, in the end it was crashed because no one could get around the fact that the bank could just randomly on chain send you a bank loan NFT with different terms, right? And you were going to have one with your original terms, and now you have two NFTs for the same bank loan with two different terms. How are you going to resolve this in court? And there is such a legal implication. We are so far from figuring out how to use NFTs properly because that requires A, to have the perfect product, B, to have the perfect users, C, to have the perfect development team that you can trust. If you cannot find any of these three, uh, your NFT project, right, is either not going to be an NFT project anymore, or it's going to end up just like Bored Ape or CryptoPunks or what's this new one? Uh, like there's so many NFT projects
So
right now,
many, yeah.
and I mean, like that is the thing. So that is the thing here. Unless we can figure out a way, right, as developers, to make a project that does not require even a single change in any piece of information, right? That is what is going to make an NFT, right? If we can keep continuously changing data, then it's not immutable anymore, and that is a problem.
Okay, I so many good lines of thinking there. I think about now technically, as a project manager, my mind immediately went to what's the technical solution. The NFT only contains an ID number, and in my centralized database, I can edit the stats of the card, right? So I can change the card. It's still your NFT, but all your NFT has is an ID number that refers to my centralized database. So that is ideal from a developer's perspective, but non-ideal from the idea that this information is on chain and immutable, right? And
No,
I
it's not an NFT anymore because what you're going to end up is with duplicates. So let's say I have this picture of a pink monkey and I put it on chain saying that this is a pink monkey. But if I were to try to use the same title number, right, with a different ID, and I throw it out there, so now you have two crypto monkeys with the same title number 1161. One has blue hair, one has pink hair. Well, now you have duplicate, and that's why like what was this new project? Azuki. Azuki's new projects came out with elementals, right? And the whole reason why so many people were really concerned with elemental was because they were recycling the same image with different ID numbers, right? And then they changed those pictures, right? Like they changed the metadata and all of that stuff, right? And what that resulted in was a huge amount of people shitting on Azuki because they took 40 million for their mint, $40 million for their mint, right? And they developed and they delivered subpar, uh, NFTs, and they like gave duplicates with different ID numbers, and it made no sense. So that's the thing. The only time an NFT remains an NFT is when it's out. It's only on chain. It is not on anywhere else except on chain. And any so if you were to take any gaming project right now, right? Take Splinterlands, you take my project, take any project that's out there. Um, any if that information can be changed, there can be a buff, it can be a nerf, right? Um, that particular card and it affects the present ID. Let's say you're owner of card, and now it's got a nerf, right? The moment it gets a nerf and that nerf is reflected within your ID number, that is not an NFT anymore. It's a centralized in-game item, and it's the same everything. So to like talk about this particular ethical impact of you changing information, right, and then calling it an NFT is so severe that I'm glad that we don't have regulation because so many people would end up breaking the rules.
Well, right, and I think regulation isn't possible until we figure out these issues. You mentioned Splinterlands, one of the top NFT gaming or Web3 gaming companies right now. I think they rank really high in transactions. They hit a pretty big point in the last bull market. Um, I think that that is the way they handle it. You own a card, but the effects of that card in the game are not decentralized. They are centralized. So, however they're reading that card, I believe the data stored on chain is something like an ID number, and they're free to adjust how that ID number works in game, whether it is a buff or a nerf. Um, and so the practical case is it's not as NFT as we might think or we might wish. Um, on the other side of the coin, do we want to play a game where developers can't make adjustments? I mean, that is so complicated. What game in history? Well, maybe there is a game like chess or something. Once the rules are written, that's how you play chess. But it seems to me that almost every game makes adjustments as it goes, um, and usually for the better. Maybe not everyone agrees, but it's balancing, I think, is what they call it. Ongoing balancing adjustments. Um, Very interesting
The
concept.
important thing here that we need to consider is the fact is that if you were to have a game that was perfect, you would also need to have people, the users, who are perfect, who are not going to abuse the system, or who are not going to, pull off scams by inflating a price or something. There's so many moving pieces when it comes to talking about NFTs and gaming.
Absolutely. So just stepping back to, I was thinking of smart contracts. So in Ethereum, you can publish a smart contract, and I've been talking to a couple different projects, and I've said, hey, we could do it this way, and they said, well, don't we want to do a smart contract? And I said, well, you can, but you better make sure that you know everything now before you publish it, because you can't change it later. If it's a real smart contract and it has an exploit, it could be audited or not. The exploit may not be invented today. It could be invented tomorrow. But you can't change that contract. You can deprecate it and launch a new one. You can fork over to something else. Like I got a snapshot. Everybody, we're going to this other smart contract. Come claim on the new one because a new hack has appeared, and now we that old one doesn't work anymore. Um, so the technology of a smart contract was big, promise. Wow. No, but we just got to trust the code. But wait, code, I don't read code. And even the people that read code may not identify the exploits. The people that are very good at that generally work it out over time and figure it out later as soon as there's a honey pot, enough money for them to be valuable to really let me look at this another way. So these immutable technologies come really with their own challenges for sure.
Yes, I mean, let's talk about one of the most famous. You know what? Let's talk about the most famous one with the biggest market cap, CryptoPunks. Did you know that CryptoPunks, there's like two versions of them? There's CryptoPunks version 1 and CryptoPunks version 2. The
Oh.
first version, which was made, had this huge exploit which allowed people to buy CryptoPunks without spending Ethereum. What that resulted in was such a large outrage at that time that what the CryptoPunks team did was they launched another version, version 2 of that. So any CryptoPunks that you see out there in the on crypto Twitter, right? Um, those are version two punks, and that is an example of that. Things can still go along even if you have a 900 million market cap, right? And this is in the bear market. And I'm going to talk about how what happened in the bull market and how high they were at that time. So keeping that in mind, you have to be extremely efficient. You have to make sure you have perfect product, right? Perfect service before you can put it on chain and call it immutable, right? CryptoPunks was a huge scandal at the time, and the way they fixed it, I suppose, yeah, it did work out because they're still surviving, they're still there, and even though like the ownership has changed, but at that time they did the right move. And no matter what happens as we go down the road, developers are always going to face challenges when it comes to creating smart contracts, when it comes to having non fungible tokens, when it comes to having immutable, trustless systems. I honestly think that NFT's topic is so big, I could probably talk another 8 hours on. And smart contracts is equally big. I mean, I have gone through so many smart contracts. That's the first thing I do. Whenever a project is launched on Ethereum, the first thing I do is go through the smart contract, right? And I come across these really basic mistakes, right? And these are $1 million projects. It come with basic mistakes, right? That can render their system, their game, their smart contract completely useless. But you know what? I would love to talk about that, within next week
Okay, so let me just wrap this
or
back around.
whatever the agenda or the topic we discuss.
Yeah, let me wrap this back around to financialization. So, no one says when you buy a license or you buy a copy of Counter Strike 2, nobody says it's an investment. Even though you might get $1,000 knife or a knife worth multiple thousands of dollars. Um, I think we're in the same space. Again, a big red flag when you feel pressured to invest. That is tricking your psychology. This is a note from last week. This space is a space where we're playing around. And yes, some people might make money. You might be able to make some money too, but it's not an investment in the sense that playing Counter Strike or buying a copy of Counter Strike is not really an investment. You can make money and you can lose money, but you can't lose money that you didn't spend, right? So be very careful when you're playing in this space. There's a lot of fun that you can have, but just wave that red flag in front of anybody that says or pressures you to invest or makes you think like you're going to be missing out. That's the old FOMO, fear of missing out. No, come and play. Spend whatever money you're comfortable spending on entertainment, and maybe that money will multiply. Maybe it'll turn to dust. That's kind of the way it goes. There's some things we can learn about this along the way, but I mean, would you is that okay? Can I say that? I mean, would you also recommend being very careful, uh, being tempted to invest money in this space right now?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things one of the biggest red flags you will actually see out there is someone who says, take part in our project and I will make you money. Right. There are projects that will like provide you or give you money. I've invested in some of those projects myself, right? But you need to make sure that you're doing your due diligence. Is a smart contract right now? Can changes can be done? Is there unlimited minting allowed for the token? Right? There's so many points that need to be focused on. Honestly, I was just thinking the other day I should make an app that literally just you put in the link of the smart contract and it'll tell you whether it's a good project or not. I was seriously thinking that. But like that is so important. Don't just look at what the marketer is saying, right? The marketer is saying, "Oh, bro, get into this project. It's amazing. It's this. It's that." Right? But do you have a product? No. Are your smart contracts renounced? No. Do you even know what a smart contract is? Yes, that's an actual legitimate question that you need to ask uh, uh, these people because so many people. It's very easy to start a project, right? It's literally it will take you nothing. You create a Discord, you drop an announcement. Well, now you have a project. You just get hire an influencer, pay him some amount of money, and that influencer is going to shill the project for you. It's very easy right now to create a project that is believable, but is it an actual project that you want to invest in? Is that an actual project that is going to deliver what it's saying it's going to deliver? If there's a game that is saying you're going to have a lot of fun with this game, but they don't have a product, that's a red flag. If there's some game, there's some product which is saying I'm gonna have a token, it's gonna give you 1% every day, and it's gonna go to the moon. Well, that's a red flag because you don't know what's gonna happen. How are they going to control inflation? What's the plan? What's the roadmap? All of these things have to be taken into consideration when you are in the Web3 space. Do not blindly invest money, right? Even if you have millions to spare.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I really think we wrapped that up pretty well, put a nice bow on it. Be careful out there, and we'll see you guys next week.